A very, very good evening. Sunday, the 2nd of March 2020. My name is Raja Mia. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. I've got quite a bit to get through with you today on what is taking place, not just nationally, but nationally is being played out locally in regarding the cover-up of the rape gangs. I'm told that if I use the term rape gangs in my transmissions and broadcasts, and YouTube demonetizes it, well, you know, what do I care? The truth of it is these are rape gangs and I will describe them as such. So in the meantime, thank you very, very much to Aid for the super chat, and I think Rian also put one up for me. Sorry Rian, I can't find your super chat, but I can put your message up. And thank you Jane for the £10 on PayPal. I am 100% community funded. I want to go through some stats and stuff before I start with you all this evening, just to show where we're up to. And why we should take confidence in what we are doing. On January the 1st, I took a decision. I shared the letter from Yvette, not from Yvette Cooper. It was from Jess, whatever her name is, Phillips, Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister for Children, and it was sent back to Oldham, refusing a public inquiry, and instead supporting a local inquiry, even though the Home Office were fully aware that a local inquiry had previously taken place by Andy Burnham and it had covered up what had taken place. As a consequence of that letter that I published, all hell broke loose, really, including Elon Musk getting involved, and I took a decision at that point to come from behind the paywall where I was operating for a number of reasons, and I'll quickly summarise those reasons. But I came out of the paywall and said, nah, stuff it. Raja, you have a responsibility to everyone and you will share your work for free, whatever comes out of it. So I took that decision, and the reason I'd been operating behind a paywall, and it's why I saw this comment and my heart missed a beat, and I'll put it up. And I'm not picking on you, Lee, because you don't know me and you've not been on this journey with me. There was a time when people would come along and post comments suggesting things like this. I don't operate in the business of suggestion and innuendo ambiguity. I'm very clear. I've been very clear, and from the outset, which is why when I say something, more often than not, it's solid. I've dotted my I's, crossed the T's. Now, I don't know if there is anyone involved in child protection in Oldham Council for 18 years with a child conviction. I don't know that. If I knew that, I would have shared that. Don't you think? The problem I've got is when people put things like that up, is that the police, who are now and have been monitoring my transmissions, the council and the lawyers who have been monitoring my transmissions, twist comments like that, and before you know it, I've got either the police hammering down my door, or I've got lawyers from the council sending me correspondence. Either way, it costs me thousands, tens of thousands of money I no longer have, and I'm the one who was carrying the can. And that happened last time and the time before, which is why we went behind the paywall rather than making it public. It was one of the reasons. The other reason, of course, is that there were a whole host of councillors, people who are now elected into council, in the Oldham Council, who had promised me that if I'd help them get elected, and none of these were councillors before, by the way, if I'd help them get elected, they would then ring fence £100 of their monthly allowance, which is £1,000 a month, give or take. They'd ring fence that and share it with me, and I'll continue to do the work, and they'll continue to campaign on behalf of all of the issues that I would bring to your attention. Unfortunately, everyone that got elected then found a way of breaking their promise. Yet they'd come back to these transmissions, want to watch them for free, because they wouldn't subscribe either, want to watch them for free, and take my analysis to inform and shape their decision making. I thought that was a barefaced cheek, I think. So I went behind the paywall for that reason as well. And in the end, I just got fed up of people taking my work and passing it off as their own, which, if you're new here, you're starting to see how that's played out elsewhere. And that happens, I accept that. But those are the reasons we went behind the paywall. I got rid of the paywall 1st of January. And two things happened. One, and I'll bring it up so you can see it, is my viewing figures went through the roof. Thank you, Robert. Robert, we helped get elected. He was a Conservative councillor in Chadderton South, and then horrible things happened to him. It's not my story to tell. I'm sure he'll find the courage one day to share his story. And of course, as we now know in our town, the truth is nothing at all like how the politicians and the police and the press in charge of the town would like to portray it. But I'm glad to see him back here. So this is my analytics on X, and as you can see, it's for just February. This is just for February. The 620,800 engagements. That's the bottom right hand corner there. Nearly 6 million impressions. 336,000 people pressed liked. 106,000 people shared the content, as in reposted the content. Yeah, the figures for January were much higher. They were 30 million. That's because Elon Musk had promoted 2 of my posts. I didn't want to share that because they're like, they're nice, but there's a reason why that happened. The wind was behind us. This is a normal month. February is now a normal month. 6 million impressions, 620,000 engagements. This is my YouTube viewing figures for January and February. Now that we are free to 2.1 million impressions, 28,000 hours of watch time, and you can see 148,000 views. That's 148,000 views on my live stream, 148,400, and the videos that I put up afterwards, 90,000. And the shorts, you can see why I don't bother with the shorts, 10,000. So that happened. Brilliant, yeah? In many ways, mission successful. The world now knows. The problem then I had was over 25% of the paid subscribers I came into this space with in January and February. Over 25%. In fact, I stopped counting. It's probably a third. I lost a third of my paid subscribers. A third of the people who's still here, by the way. I've checked the back of the admin sort of page on Redwall and the Rabble. They're still opening the emails. They're still consuming the content. They decided, why should we pay? If it's putting it out for free, why should we pay? So those 2 things happened. I lost, give or take, a third. And I don't earn a lot of money. Regardless of what some people may claim, I do not earn a lot of money. I've been living hand to mouth for 6 years now, and I'm out of savings because of court case after court case, essentially. So I look at, and I'll put this back up, people like Robert giving me £20. That's coming up to January. I wouldn't earn that in a day. And that's the truth of it. Jane sending me £10 into PayPal. I'd get that in maybe a week if I was lucky, Jane. As for why these people went, people are people. They can get it for free. That's why they went. They didn't leave. They just cancelled the paid subscriptions because they can get it for free. Thank you, Denise. So that's what's happened. So if you take value in these transmissions, my first target really is to build back up my paid subscriber base with people who value me and who are willing to pay and support me with just 75 pence a week, £3 a month, or they can pay outright £30 for the full year, 75 pence a week, who take value in my work and will pay and support me even though they can access it for free. I did, mate. I worked in a cafe in Royton so I could put some money together for my daughter for Christmas and her birthday. I'm not proud, but no, people shafted me. The councillors shafted me. The police came and arrested me. Lawyers took me to court repeatedly. I think the phrase is lawfare. And by the end of it, I was out of savings. And I scraped together a supporter base who were willing to pay. And a lot of them were only willing to pay after I went behind a paywall. And they found out there was no other way of accessing it for free. And in the end, I said, no, stuff it. I have a responsibility to share all the content for free. Because you all have a right to know what's going on. I'm here to educate you. I'm here to support you. And what will be, will be. So my first ask is those of you. And the majority of you. And people say, why do you keep asking? Because over 99%, more than that, 99.9%, 99.99% of people who come and take value from my work, not just scroll through it, but watch repeatedly, do not in any way contribute anything. So my plea is not to all of you who do support me and have been supporting me, so don't take it personally. My plea is to the vast, vast majority who perhaps do not appreciate or understand the nature of this relationship. So that's what we are up to. And so there's no, Raja, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. I get people who I don't know try and tell me what to do. I'm far too old to be told by strangers who claim to have my best interests in me. Since I started this stream, in terms of either buy me a coffee or subscriptions, I'm looking at a screen, I've had £5 come in. I'm not complaining, I'm just letting you know. I've had £5 come in. And then there's been a £10 on the PayPal. And I appreciate the YouTube income, but they take a chunk of it and I get it in a lump sum once it reaches a threshold of £500, because it's usually in the past been once every 3 months, 4 months, you'll get to that threshold. Yeah. I'm just not interested. I'm not interested at all in other people who I don't know claiming they have my interest at heart. Okay. Let us get on with this evening's transmission. I stopped the last transmission because I got disheartened, and I'll pick up there. But here, so you see it. In fact, I'll just bring up, if I can, let me try and find it. Yeah, this is January on YouTube. $24.3 million impressions, 2.1 million likes, 987,000, over 200,000 profile visits. So what am I saying to you?
Do not fear them.
Let me get rid of that. What am I saying to you? I'm saying to you, we're winning. The decision to do what we did, which was say, no, we're going to put all the content out for free, was the right decision to make to get the awareness up. And now my hope is over the course of March, I can get back 10 paid subscribers a day. And I hit 10 today. 10 paid subscribers a day till the end of March, which will get me back the paid subscribers I've lost. So if you see me pushing all the time, all I'll say to you is the reason why isn't I'm directing at you who already support me. I'm directing it at the 99.99% of people, the hundreds of thousands of people, the millions who have engaged in my work, who take value from my work, and I'm pleading with them and the sense of goodwill perhaps that I am of value, and 75 pence a week is completely insignificant. So that's my hope. Thank you, Gary. The subscriptions are the best way for me. PayPal's great, but I don't know if it's coming or going. I've got bills to pay like all of you lot, and when you live in hand to mouth and you don't know whether you're going to get through next month, the best way for me is the subscriptions for Redwall and Rabble. And it also makes me feel better, if I'm honest with you, because it makes me feel as though actually what you're doing is, what I'm doing is I'm providing you with value, with content, and it's a relationship. And you're taking value for it, and you're putting a cost to it. Gary, Denise, Tony, the others who've been with me will share with you that they've repeatedly attacked me and made reference to me as a beggar. Repeatedly. Every day, day in, day out, beggar, beggar, beggar. I walk down the street and someone will open the window and throw pennies at me. I've not shared any of this with you. Silly, Pakistani white boys doing it. And the way I see it is, I'm not here to beg you for anything. I'm providing a service, and you're willing to support me and pay towards receiving that service. No different than if you'd gone to the movie, even hear someone busk on the street. There's a transaction. And we all know why they're doing it, Colin. We all know why they're doing it. Because they're desperate to stop me. Because we now all know what this is about. There is a Pakistani takeover. There is an Islamist threat in the United Kingdom. And those in positions of power are in bed with these people. And have had a relationship with them for decades. And yes, many of you have suspected it. But what I've done is I've evidenced it. I've put it in a framework that you understand. And I've supported people to campaign off the back of it. One of my followers on X now is Liz Truss. She's the former Prime Minister. And if anyone's listened to her recent interviews, you'll see she echoes a lot of what I say. Do you think that's by accident? I don't think that's by accident. So please, thank you. With Chutney, Roy, there's a story in Oldham where we riled the leader, Arud Sharab, so much by doing what we did. Actually stood up in the council chamber and accused anyone who used the term mango chutney as being racist. Wow. Thank you, sure. Yeah, Daddy from Rochdale, well, the only reason you all knew that is because I released it into the public domain, and I'd evidenced that, and I released it. They called me a barefaced liar at the time. And this is, I know, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this. And this is, again, the people who've been with me will tell you, I feel uncomfortable with this. Of course I'm grateful. If you've already subscribed and you want to buy me a cup of coffee or send me a couple of quid over PayPal, of course I'm grateful. But my hope always was that we just have enough supporters. That the people who are here right now, watching this, taking value from this, would just commit £3 a month, 75 pence a week. I mean, I can't help but look at some of those figures. There's 100,000 people on YouTube a month. 100,000. If 10,000 of them just committed £3 each, I'd be wealthy. Not that I care, but you understand? You understand, don't you? If 1,000 did it, then after minimum wage, after all my expenses, I'll be making minimum wage. I'd be okay. I doubt it, mate. Okay, let's get on with this evening. This letter was sent to Robert, who said hello earlier, ex-councillor. Robert wrote to the Home Office just immediately after all of this came out in January, 17th of January. You can see it there. And, sorry, I got the wrong pen. This is the response we got back. This response is absolutely outrageous, and I will go through it systematically. And what should have happened? What should have happened is that in the same way the national media and the international media jumped on Jess Phillips' letter, this letter should have been jumped on, but it hasn't been. And it hasn't been because people are now too scared, or it's yesterday's news, it's no longer fashionable. I don't know. I've shared this letter repeatedly on X, and it just didn't get the traction. And it should do. I even put it into an article, and I wrote an entire article about it. I spent a couple of days putting an article together. And I'll go through what's wrong with this, so you see it. The first one, and I started this, so please bear with me if it feels like I'm repeating it. The first sentence, it says, is the safety of our children is naturally an important issue to many. That sentence suggests that child safety is not universally important. And remember, this is a letter from the Home Office, a government department. And ask anyone in government, and they will confirm with you that the first duty of government is to protect its citizens. All of them, in particular those who are vulnerable. And by saying that, the phrasing, it reveals fundamental misframing of child protection. It does, by characterising child safety as important to many, rather than to all, which is what it should say. The Home Office inadvertently, that unconscious bias thing, that's what you're seeing here. It suggests that this is a special interest concern. The safety of children is a special interest concern for some people, not for all of us. This subtle language, you might miss it. I don't miss it. It hit me straight away. And it reflects a mindset that fails to recognise the absolute priority child protection should be for everyone. And I'll read out something to you. I wrote this as a sentence I would have liked to have seen instead. The safety of our children is our highest priority and a fundamental obligation of government. Child sexual abuse and exploitation are despicable crimes that demand our complete commitment to ensure all children are protected. How hard would that have been? Yet here we have the opening sentence of the substantive part of this letter saying, the safety of our children is naturally an important issue to many. It then ignores what I make reference to as a democratic mandate, the democratic process. The government is supporting Oldham Council, who have confirmed work to set a local inquiry is underway. Now look at the date, 24th of February 2025. The council meeting had already taken place by then, when every councillor in the council chamber voted to reject this local inquiry and say we want a statutory inquiry. Every councillor had done that. Yet here we are. The Home Office ignored that decision and is carrying on regardless. And of course, the local Labour Party councillors are happy to carry on regardless. The more appropriate response should have been something as simple as the government acknowledges Oldham Council's recent unanimous vote calling for a statutory inquiry. We are reviewing this request and will work with the council to ensure any inquiry has the necessary powers and independence to achieve justice. Then throughout this entire letter is what's known as weak accountability language. And I'll show you just one sentence here. We hope to reassure you that locally led inquiries are expected to be independent. That first bit. We hope to reassure you that locally led inquiries are expected to be independent. The choice of the word expected to be rather than required to be, or even will be, creates a major accountability gap. It suggests independence is aspirational rather than mandatory. It provides no guarantee that inquiries will actually operate independently from the local authorities being investigated. Buried there. You'll miss it if you don't have an eye to read these documents in this way. The more appropriate response would have been, we will ensure that all inquiries are fully independent with clear mandates that prevent any conflicts of interest. Independence will be non-negotiable with specific measures to guarantee inquiries remain free from undue influence. Now, instead we hope to reassure you that they are expected to be. The next one, the people who are incriminated are the ones doing the investigating. Self-investigation problem. Just give me 1 second, let me find it. It is right that these take place at a local level so that those responsible for delivering services work to ensure lessons are learnt. Well, those responsible for delivering services at a local level were the very same people who are responsible for failing these children and then covering up these crimes that we've been fighting for 6 years. This approach ignores the fundamental conflict of interest when institutions that fail to protect children are tasked with investigating these failures. It creates both actual and perceived issues, with independence and risk perpetuating the same dynamics that enabled abuse to continue. These people should not be marking their own homework. What should have happened was something like this. While local knowledge is valuable, we recognise the need for independent oversight. Inquiries will be conducted by independent experts with no previous connection to the organisations being investigated, ensuring complete impartiality and public confidence. It gets worse for this unsigned letter, by the way. You can see, unsigned. The audit will also help to inform future local inquiries, which we believe are the best way to investigate specific local crimes and issues. This statement reveals that regardless of whatever Baroness Casey's national audit reveals, remember, they've ordered a national audit, it doesn't matter what that says, we've already predetermined what we will do next, which is continue with these local inquiries. What they could have said, what they should have said, was based on the findings of Baroness Casey's national audit, we will determine the most appropriate approach to investigations, which may include a national statutory inquiry if patterns of systematic failures across multiple areas are identified. There's also a fragmented strategy throughout this letter. Local detail, local grooming gang issues, locally relevant answers. This is not a local problem. It is a national problem, and carving it up into not just local incidents, but isolated local incidents does the entire nation a disservice. No way would you investigate any other crime this way. Well, why don't you wait, Paul? And what makes you think it's on me to hold them accountable? I'm holding them accountable by sharing a letter that my team wrote, forced a response, and exposed this. That's what I've already done. Where was I? Local strategies. By insisting on treating these as disconnected local issues, the government prevents examination of the systemic patterns, shared failures and cross-jurisdictional aspects of these crimes. The fragmented strategy makes it impossible to identify and address nationwide institutional failures and any undercurrent shared, such as, and I'm clear, were children traded for votes? Well, you'd find out, wouldn't you, if you looked at the pattern across the country where this happened? And a more appropriate response? While we recognise that local inquiries can provide important community-specific insights, we acknowledge the evidence of similar patterns across multiple areas. Our approach will ensure both local detail and national patterns are properly investigated. They've not even got an approach. They've not even got an approach. Then there is what I identified straight away. The letter provides no specific framework, requirements or standards for how these local inquiries should be conducted. So it's a free-for-all. Do whatever you want. Without standardised requirements or a consistent framework, Each local inquiry will operate differently, making it impossible to compare findings, identify common themes, or ensure thorough investigation. This lack of standards creates the risk that inquiries will be conducted with varying degrees of rigour and independence. Remember, they've already admitted that they don't have the data. They've already admitted they're not collecting the data. So you're going to see in Oldham one lot of data collected in one way, maybe in Bradford something else collected in a different way. None of this is accidental. None of this is accidental. And again, I've written this for you. A more appropriate response would be to ensure consistency and thoroughness. The Home Office will establish a mandatory framework for all inquiries, including minimum standards for independence, evidence gathering, witness protection, transparency and reporting. I'm sorry, this is bread and butter work. When I was involved in the government, a new intern would be expected to have this level of competence. Not an intern, you understand, a junior civil servant. They also misrepresent the Telford example. Here we go. There are examples of inquiries, such as in Telford, where an independent chair was appointed with responsibility for setting the terms of reference and ensuring that the inquiry considers the necessary evidence. Whilst mentioning Telford as an example of good practice, the letter makes no commitment to requiring similar independence for other inquiries. Here's what you could have had. The selective reference to Telford creates an impression of rigour without any actual promises, potentially allowing other inquiries to proceed with less independence. This letter was written this way on purpose. A more appropriate response, a clear sentence, or two sentences, would be, all inquiries will follow the Telford model as a minimum standard, with independent chairs empowered to set terms of reference and determine evidence requirements without interference from local authorities or central government. Then there's a contradictory position on national understanding. The letter acknowledges the need for a national audit. There you go. Appointed Baroness Louise Casey to oversee a national audit. So it acknowledges the need for a national audit to understand scale, nature and drivers of abuse, while simultaneously rejecting a national inquiry that could address these factors. So why have a national audit if at the same time you're rejecting a national inquiry that could address these factors? Do you see the contradiction? This contradiction reveals not just an inconsistent approach. It shows that the government recognises the need to understand the national dimensions of the issue, yet refuses to consider a national investigation with the power to properly address them. I'm clear on what this is suggesting. It suggests an unwillingness to follow evidence to its logical conclusions. What they should have said is, the national audit will determine whether these crimes represent isolated incidents or a pattern of failures requiring a national response. If the audit identifies systematic issues across multiple areas, we'll establish a national statutory inquiry with full powers. See? Easy. Not here. And of course, the obvious one, and Robert raised it in his letter, this inquiry has no statutory powers, and without statutory powers, inquiries cannot compel reluctant witnesses to testify or force the production of potentially damaging documents. This fundamental weakness means that anyone with an interest in concealing information can simply refuse to cooperate, severely limiting the inquiry's effectiveness. And they have done. The evidence is that's exactly what they have done, repeatedly. The more appropriate response would have been, we understand concerns about non-statutory inquiry limitations. We'll ensure all inquiries have the necessary legal powers to compel witness testimony and document production, whether through existing legal frameworks or by converting to statutory inquiries were required. This isn't a joke, although they're treating it as a joke. We're discussing here the systematic sexual exploitation, gang rape of an estimated 100,000 children, possibly more, over 3 decades, where the authorities have been complicit in facilitating these crimes and then covering up what took place. The letter's fundamental failure is its refusal to acknowledge the scale and severity of what has occurred. When identical patterns of abuse emerge simultaneously across towns and cities in the UK, Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, Oxford, Oldham, Newcastle, everywhere, Kirklees, all over the place. This is not a series of local coincidences. It is evidence of a national failing that demands a national response. No one should be surprised. No one should be surprised that this letter is not signed. And for those of you who've been on this journey, no one should be surprised that no one in the legacy media wants anything to do with this letter. Because sharing this and promoting it, and I am only one person who can share and promote so much. GB News should be all over this. The Telegraph should be all over this, and they're not. I know it's boring. I know I'm not a sensationalist sort of person. I dot the I's, cross the T's, and work through things methodically. And here is another example of how that process demonstrates to the vast majority of people across this country are outraged by this, that Yvette Cooper's Home Office is continuing to facilitate the cover-up. And if I do get disheartened, I get disheartened because I know this is dynamite. I know this document is dynamite. I know they've seen it, and not one of them will run with it. And it takes us back to that exact same place where 5 years ago or so, we released that email from Kevin Fitzpatrick at the BBC contacting Jim McMahon, was leader of Oldham Council, and a whole host of others. Would they agree to conspire with each other to cover up the gang rape of children in my hometown who are being dragged into shisha bars and gang raped? Something which now has been proven to be completely true. If you are new to me, my name is Raj Amir. I run the Recusant 9 transmissions. I've been at this for 6 years or so now. I found myself in a position where I could not look the other way to the cover up of the grooming and gang rape of children in my hometown. I led the campaign that exposed the political dimension of the cover-up, and as a consequence of that, this is now national news and has caused international outrage. My focus is to try and campaign and help secure a national inquiry, a public inquiry, with all those involved in facilitating the cover-up, including the most senior politicians in the country, and I'll name them yet again: Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham, Jim McMahon, Debbie Abrahams, amongst many others, are held to account for their role in facilitating the cover. These people, in my opinion, should be in prison. There should be trials and they should be in prison. Yet here we have the Home Office, Yvette Cooper's Home Office, Yvette Cooper, who gave the former council leader, Amanda Chadderton, who is neck deep in the cover-up herself, after we voted her out, the job of campaign manager in her team. So to go back to what am I going to do about it? I'm going to keep exposing them, and I'm going to keep raising awareness so more and more people become aware of what's took place. And if there is an expectation for me to do more, then please tell me what it is the more you want me to do. I've already made my position clear. We will not get a national inquiry with this government, and it will take it for the next government, hopefully reform or conservative coalition, I don't know, to have this in their manifestos. And it's for us, through numbers, which will force them to have it in the manifestos, because if enough of us think it's important, they'll think it's important because it's a vote winner. And once that party gets in, whoever is in government, I will continue to do my best to work with a government who wants to look at this to help inform and shape what the national inquiry looks like and make sure that it stays true to purpose. So what am I going to do? To the gentleman who asked me, I've already sacrificed 6 years of my life, and I'm committing the next 6 years of my life. My question to you, sir, is what are you going to do? Please, if you're finding value, there's a link at the top. My aim is to rebuild my supporter base after losing, give or take, a third after I went free to air. If you're finding value, 637 of you so far today. It's a lot lower now. It always goes back to a lower sort of benchmark. This isn't for everyone. I know my work isn't for everyone. I accept that. But if you're finding value and you're not subscribed, there's nothing to stop you from committing 75 pence a week. And you can see I'm not giving up hope. I'm not giving up hope at all. I'm just very clear. It's boring what we do. And you've got to stay at it and stay at it and stay at it. It's what we've done for 6 years, and we'll do it for 6 more. I'm not going to lie to you and say we can fix it like that, because we can't. You've seen this is a Home Office letter. You've seen what's took place. Now let me show you what is taking place at a local level in Oldham to facilitate this cover-up. There is a council meeting in Oldham on Thursday. It's to ratify an extraordinary council meeting has been called before the budget meeting, and it's to ratify a woman called Shelley Kipling as the chief executive. Shelley Kipling is the interim chief executive who was appointed in some dodgy process that meant that they couldn't validate her interim appointment, so they had to go through an external process. Well, they ended up hiring her anyway, which doesn't surprise me. Now, I've never met Shelley Kipling, but I have a number of issues with her. And before the Labour Party idiots come along, it's nothing to do with her weight, it's nothing to do with her dress sense, and it's nothing to do with the fact that she's female. It's to do with her competency and her track record. First and foremost, Oldham is one of the most challenging local authorities in the country. It's in a complete mess. This woman has never operated at this level before. She was over-promoted by Arud Shah because she's drinking buddies with Arud Shah. The council leader, neck deep in the cover-up and in criminal connections, needs a compliant chief executive. It's always better to have someone compliant who's over-promoted, because it means it's an interdependent relationship. It won't be the first time in local government, it won't be the last time. But that's Shelley Kipling and Arud Shah. Arud Shah, by the way, this week, this is the leader of Oldham Council and chair of the National Constitutional Committee of the Labour Party, was spotted driving around in the passenger seat of a £150,000-200,000 Bentley with Irish Jimmy, the career criminal getaway driver of Dale Cregan, driving in it. So that's what's going on in this town at the same time. These people don't care. The leader of the council is sat in the passenger seat of a multi-millionaire's luxury vehicle being driven around by her so-called childhood friend, the convicted getaway driver of a cop killer, convicted heroin dealer, career criminal. An ordinary citizen might ask, where on earth have they got the money for a car like that? Someone like me would say, what on earth is a council leader doing? Not just sat next to an individual like that, but a passenger in a car like that in one of the poorest towns in the country. What do the optics look like? Shelley Kipling will have not just no problem with that. Shelley Kipling promoted Irish Jimmy as something called a community ambassador. That's a vigilante group endorsed by Oldham Council to take to the streets should there be any far-right concerns. Lewis Quigg objected to it. The Conservatives objected to it, Lewis in particular, and my understanding his life has been made hell ever since. So that the interim chief executive is now going to be announced as a permanent chief executive later on this week, has already openly endorsed the convicted heroin dealing getaway driver of a cop killer, having some form of quasi-official role with the council and the police. Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, and yes, Fiona. So that's reason number two. Reason number three. One is her qualification, the competency. Second is how she's been over-promoted, in my opinion, because of her relationship with Arud Shah, and she'll look out for her whilst she looks out for her. The third reason is how she's defended a convicted heroin dealer being part of some sort of vigilante team. Her salary is about £250,000, I think. And then the next reason, the main reason for me, is Shelley Kipling was part of the communications team during the time of the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children in my town. She worked underneath a man called Carl Marsden, who was in charge of the comms team. Carl Marsden celebrated keeping the story out of the newspapers. His wife, Dawn Marsden, who worked at the Oldham Chronicle, this wouldn't have been possible in terms of censoring this without some sort of relationship between the Chronicle and the council's communications team. Maybe it's a coincidence that Dawn Marsden worked at the Chron at the time. I'll leave that to you to decide. She now works for Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister. Shelley Kipling has questions to answer. Any investigation into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children in Oldham should be interviewing Shelley Kipling. Yet here we have her made chief executive. Of course, I have a problem with that. Everyone in Oldham should have a problem with that. Everyone in this country should have a problem with that. You can see what's taking place here, because Shelley Kipling is not on her own in the senior leadership team in the town, where we should be worried. As well as appointing Shelley Kipling, quietly Oldham Council have appointed this man called Mike Barker. You can see him, Deputy Chief Executive Health and Care, Mike Barker. I can't find any document where he was externally interviewed to become Deputy Chief Executive. Why should you be worried? This is Mike Barker. I can find this, where he was the accountable officer for NHS Oldham Clinical Commissioning Group, and has been appointed to be the lead person for health and care in Oldham. I can find that, but I can't find where he became Deputy Chief Executive. Why should you be worried about Mike Barker becoming Deputy Chief Executive? Mike Barker is married to Paula Barker. This is Paula Barker. She's a Labour Party MP. Do you want more? I'll give you more. They've then appointed this man. His name is Steve Hughes, a Rossendale councillor, Labour councillor, you can see. He got himself in trouble. Steve Hughes. Behind controversial taxi crackdown, had to get mates to call him cabs. Steve Hughes is a Labour Party councillor who is now the Assistant Director of Strategy, Performance at Oldham Council. He's the Assistant Director of Strategy and Performance. What this man did in his role, he signed off on this. The appointment of an interim director of finance. That's the person who looks after all the millions. Remember, this is a council on the verge of bankruptcy, and the existing director of finance, who's only here for a short time, has run away. So they brought on an interim. And the person who recommended the decision, you can see his name now, Steve Hughes. So what these people are doing is they're occupying all the powerful positions in the town. A chief executive who was part of the comms team during the time of the cover-up, like this, with Arud Shah, and happy to entertain whatever it is Irishimi is in the council. You've got Steve Hughes, Labour Party councillor from somewhere else, in a strategic role as the Assistant Director for Strategy and Performance, and you've got Mike Barker, whose wife is a Labour Party MP. Black Lives Matter on her knee. You've then got the borough solicitor, and those of you who watched the last council meeting would have seen him in action, Alexander Bogatov, interim borough solicitor. It is disgraceful. And there is a vote next week. There's a vote next week, on Thursday, to approve Shelley Kipling's role. Now, I have relationships in the council. I have my sources all over the place. And I take no joy when I do this, but I did this anyway. I know the Conservatives now have a new group leader. I get on with him. Yeah. Dave? So they've got a new group leader. So let me get my focus right so I can say this in the right way. So his name is Dave Arnott, elected a while back. Supports me. I support him. I still support him. But the appointment of Shelley Kipling could not have happened without Dave being one of those who signed it off. You saw last time when they tried to sign off Shelley Kipling as an interim, Howard Sykes got up and voted for it, even against some of his own Lib Dems. What I find, and it's one of the reasons why I'm on the verge of giving up on this, in particular the specifics to do with Oldham, I am on the verge of giving up on this, is that no matter who we help, once the moment comes where they are tested, where they're elected on a mandate to fight on behalf of us, once the moment comes where they're tested, they end up behaving no different than those in the trough. Dave should have objected to it. Dave should have objected to the appointment of Shelley Kipling because Dave knows Shelley Kipling's past. He knows of her role in the communications team involved in the cover-up of the gang rape of children. He knows of her support for Irishimi, and he knows of her friendship with Arud Shah, which led to the position she's now in, over-promoted, underqualified. Not only does he seem like he supported it, because the council press release says unanimous, universal, so it means everyone on the appointments committee agreed with the appointment of Shelley Kipling. He was also evasive with me when I asked him before the press release came out. Now, I asked him something I already knew, and the reason I asked him something like that was it was an easy one for me to see, well, now he's in a position of power, is he going to behave differently? And sadly, he did behave differently. So my position is very clear now. When it comes to the politics in Oldham, I've had enough. With the exception of Lewis and others who've made mistakes but got better, like Mark Wilkinson and Sandra, with the exception of 3 or 4 people, time after time after time, when the moment comes to demonstrate your worth to the town, you do completely the opposite, and you take sides with the very establishment who are involved in the cover-up of the gang rape of children. Now, you can see I'm not enjoying this. It's easy when I can rant and rave at someone because I don't like them or I have no relationship with them. But I have a job to do, and it's to be straight down the line. So this is all I'll say on the matter. On Thursday, councillors at Oldham Council will now vote to ratify the appointment of Shelley Kipling as Chief Executive. Knowing what you all know, every councillor that raises their hand in support of Shelley Kipling as the permanent Chief Executive of Oldham Council is themselves complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children, because they know what is happening and what the purpose of this woman being appointed into that role is. And if you follow Facebook, you'll have seen Lewis has already issued a statement, nothing to do with me. Lewis has already issued a statement where he's confirmed he will be voting against Shelley Kipling's appointment. How do you feel? How am I meant to feel when people who I value, who I trust, who I respect time after time after time, when the opportunity comes for them to demonstrate their worth to all of you, behave like this? So I think we're coming to a crossroads. There's no election this May. Next May, who knows what will happen. The work has gone down a national road, and what's the point of me fighting locally when those who we've supported to get into positions of power locally repeatedly betray us? So that's what we're up to. If you found value in this evening, and please, what I do also is after this I take it off, because people get in touch with me and say, Roger, you talk too slow, you do this, you do that. It's because I'm interacting with people, I'm reading what they're saying, I'm trying to think how to say things properly in a way that makes sense, is reasoned, is rational, can be followed. I will take the video down tomorrow. Once I've finished tonight, I download it all, edit it all. It's another 3 hours. Upload it onto YouTube. And then tomorrow, you'll have an edited video up, identical of this, just edited down. And this one taken off. I'll leave it on overnight. I'll leave this one overnight for the people who watch it overnight. But if you find value in my work, please take out a paid subscription to Redwall and the Rabble. 75 pence a week, £3 a month, or just £30 for the full year. I'll keep asking, and you know, understand why I'll keep asking. My plan is to be back tomorrow to do another transmission specifically on Angela Rayner and the Islamophobia task force that she's now confirmed over the weekend. If you followed my work, you'll see there's an article gone out, again extensive, thorough, and it affects the entire country, and that's where the work's gone. So why should I bicker in a town where the politicians we've supported repeatedly betrayed us repeatedly? And if that wasn't enough, when I looked at the analytics of the people who cancelled their paid subscriptions over the quarter, approaching a third of my paid supporters, the vast majority of them were from Oldham. If you find value in the work, please like, please share, please continue to promote, discuss, debate, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow. Good evening.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.